Now, lots of politicians and candidates have not been wanting to give us interviews during this campaign. They prefer to talk to the ABC. But the thing with these pre-poll booths, where they're all out spruiking for early votes, is that they're out in the open, and if you can find out or work out where they're going to be, you can catch up with some of these candidates, as I did last week with Catherine Deeves, or earlier this week, I should say, with Catherine Deeves. And this morning, I managed to find Allegra Spender. Here's our little chat. Allegra.
Hello.
Chris Kenny from Sky News.
Hello.
Pleased to meet you. We've been keen for a chat, but you haven't been able to come into the studio, so I thought I'd pop out.
You find me on the hustings.
We
That's
do.
where I belong.
It is indeed where you belong. I wonder if you could start off just by telling me what your preferred climate change policies will actually do to the climate.
So I think what I'm saying is that we should reach a 50% reduction by 2030, because that is in line with what the scientific community identifies as what we need as a world, and it's also what in line with the Business Council of Australia and other leading businesses say it's good for the economy. And I think that's the big thing we need to talk about. Climate action is good for the economy as well as the right thing to do by the environment.
So everybody's backing net zero by 2050, but your target is 20% higher than the coalition for 2030 and 7% higher than Labor for 2030. But what will it do to the climate, to the environment?
Well, I think that's about the universe, it's about all the world working together on this, because again the IPCC says that if the world doesn't as a whole reduce by 50% by 2030, then we are on track for much more warming.
But Australia has already reduced its emissions by more than most developed nations, and as I mentioned, we're going for the net zero by 2050. What will Australia's emissions reductions do for the climate?
What they're going to do is contribute to the world reducing their emissions by 2030 in line with science.
But the world emissions are growing. Global emissions are growing, so we're not contributing to a reduction of emissions. We are reducing our emissions while global emissions grow.
We're all working together on this. I think the globe.
China isn't.
Yeah,
Indonesia isn't.
So China,
India isn't. Africa isn't.
I'm happy to say China has put in last year, in 1 year, put in more offshore wind than the whole world put together in the last 5 years.
China's
That's an incredible.
Excuse me a second. Last year, China's emissions grew by the same amount as Australia's total emissions. If we'd shut down our country last year, China's emissions grew by an equivalent amount.
So it's the whole world is transforming, and this is so China.
No, that's not transforming, that's growing.
So in China, for example, they have, by all their electricity companies, by 2025 have to get to 50% renewable. They are making huge transitions. They don't want to be dependent on our coal. They don't want to be dependent on our gas. They are seeking their own ways to decarbonise, and this is a worldwide action. Now, I'm sure you pay your tax, Chris, but I'm sure that what you do is you don't say, well, I'm not going to pay my tax because, frankly, my tax doesn't really matter. This money doesn't matter to the global, to Australia's GDP. And that's the same argument. Australia needs to be part of the group that does the right thing. And
you want Australia to do more. But how's it in our interest if there's no environmental benefit? You say China is making a transmission. China's emissions in the last 2 years have grown by double Australia's total emissions. So obviously there's no environmental benefit from all the action you're recommending in Australia.
So what I'm saying is, regardless, even if you put all your environment aside, we should do this for economic reasons, because the Europeans are going to tax our products. They have said this, they're going to threaten us, and that's going to be.
Europeans are increasing nuclear and reopening old coal-fired generators because they're in an energy crisis.
Yeah, and so what they're doing is they're saying that they are saying, look, Australia, you have this unique opportunity.
Where in the world has a developed economy switched to renewable energy and ended up with cheaper, more reliable power?
CSIRO shows that
that's not a country. Where in the world has this happened?
Solar, like Australia, is the cheapest place to do solar and wind. We are so lucky. We are a blessed country.
But if it's so obvious, where in the world has it actually happened?
We're all going through a transition, and Australia is the sunniest, windiest place around, where a solar panel here creates 2 to 3 times more electricity than it does in Europe. This is our competitive advantage for the future, and I'm really excited by that.
Okay, I'm familiar with your arguments about business and the economy. I'm very highly sceptical of them because no country's ever done this, but I'm familiar with those arguments. But what about the environmental argument? You can't tell anybody voting for you that your environment policies, if implemented by a federal government, would do anything to change the climate in Australia or globally?
I think what I'm saying is that we as a world act on this, and we can, as a world, can do the right thing. And Australia is influential. Let's not give up our power.
You think China's going to follow Australia's lead, really?
You see, Australia's a very influential country in the world in terms of what we do.
What do you think Australia could convince China to do first? Get out of the Solomon Islands or start reducing its emissions?
I think that this is a huge economic opportunity for Australia, and that's why I'm 100% behind this.
Would you agree that a Federal Integrity Commission could look at the relationship between Climate 200 and the so-called teal independence in Simon Holmes' report?
So I think we should establish a Federal Integrity Commission with teeth that has the ability to look at systemic corruption, and I think that we should, and it is up to everybody, it's up for the Integrity Commission to work out what they see as corruption. That is what they should do.
Something like that though, Climate 200 and the teal independence, whether or not your organisations are truly independent or whether you're effectively a de facto political party, would that be something an Integrity Commission could look at?
So I've been really clear to say that it's not for me to say what the Integrity Commission covers, because it's up to them about corruption. Climate 200 is a group of 10,000 people. So 10,000 people around Australia have said we need to act on climate, we need to act integrity, and we need to act on women, and we're going to support it with money. And they are following all the AEC lines, but frankly, almost all my money is coming from Wentworth, and I'm really excited by that, because that's the community. We have 1,000 volunteers in Wentworth.
What's your sense of the election result?
I don't know. I'm just giving it 150%, and then we'll see on the day. I think we've got a great chance, but, I take absolutely nothing for granted.
Would it be a loss for the Parliament to see Dave Sharma leave?
I think this is really about what Wentworth wants. Wentworth wants action and someone who can stand up for what are the key issues of this community, and not someone who walks the talk, not just, is not just talk. It's really about real action and is willing to stand up. And he's had 3 years, but he's not driven a moderate agenda, which is what this community, which is a very moderate community, is seeking.
Thanks for your time.
That's a pleasure.
I don't get it. We should do more, spend more money, hurt ourselves more, but there's no environmental benefit. So why are we doing this? To make rich people feel good? Anyway, we'll try and catch up with some more candidates as the campaign goes on.